You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, my guest is Fred Van Schie. Fred has been a friend of the podcast for a long time, has contributed art to the show in the past, and he's just generally become a friend. Fred grew up in the Netherlands and now lives in California, where he works with bands, shoe companies, rides his bike, and hangs out with family and friends. Fred talks more about his life in this episode, which is interesting in and of itself in connection to the songs that we get into. But the thing that really stands out to me about this episode is the way propaganda landed with him as a young person growing up in Europe, and then seeing how the song's meanings adapted and grew after he moved to the United States. It got me thinking about the question, how would this band land differently with me if I hadn't grown up in the middle of Missouri? How would the band land with me if I had grown up in, say, Sweden or South Korea or the Netherlands? The places we grow up shape the way we digest and take in art. That is what stands out to me so much about this conversation with Fred. On this episode, Fred and I chat about I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist, Resisting Tyrannical Government, a Speculative Fiction, and Failed Imagineer. My favorite part of our conversation is the Failed Imagineer section due to Fred's personal experiences with the locations listed in the song. Fred is on Instagram. If you want to go say hi, you can find him at Fred Van Schie. That's FredVanSchie. Go follow him and say hello. Please enjoy our conversation. Fred Van Schie, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fred, I'm delighted that you're here. I'm wondering if you can just spend a moment and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Fred Van Schie. I'm 45 years old and live in Oceanside, California. I was born in a small town between Arnhem and Nijmegen, which is in Holland. I moved out to California 2007, so like 16 years ago. And for work, I am the global marketing manager at Etnies Footwear.
You know, Fred, every time I see your Strava data, living in Oceanside, California, I'm so jealous about your weather and climate because as a cyclist and runner who plods my way through my athletic endeavors in Buffalo, New York, I'm always extremely jealous. So my hope is that I can get out there and ride bikes with you sometime out in California because I need the getaway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny. I actually just got off a bike ride this morning and it dropped down to 36, which is as cold as it gets. But I actually still wear shorts for that reason, because I have friends in San Francisco or in Holland that, have much worse, are like much worse off with the early morning weather. So, yep.
I love
always
it.
Welcome.
Fred, I'm curious about a little bit about your musical journey throughout your life, the pathway to finding the bands that you have grown to love. Tell me a little bit about your discovery of music. Take me back as far as you need to.
Yeah, this is kind of funny because when I saw your notes, at first I was like kind of doing like my homework, and it kind of took me to like this whole like musical journey, which has actually been pretty rad. So as far as I can remember, the first cassette tape I got from my dad was like a Beatles mixtape kind of. Like this blue cassette tape. I remember that very vividly. And then my dad was really into the Stones as well. So that's kind of like the earliest memories. My cousin was into heavy metal. I started high school in September 1991. And then Nevermind came out later that month. And that basically set me on a path I feel that I'm still on, that I smell like Teen Spirit. I remember that song very vividly the first time I saw it on MTV, and that definitely put me on like heavier music. And obviously, there was a whole lot back then. MTV played so much good music. It was like Metallica and Pearl Jam and Therapy, Biohazard. Like I got into definitely all that stuff. Not into like the super heavy, like not like the Pantera and stuff. That was like too heavy for me, kind of still is.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I got into like alternative, heavier music from then. And then in 1995, I moved to like the bigger town, like the city, with my folks. I lived in like a small town close to like the city. And then I switched schools, and that's when I started like going to shows, and I really got into like music, like alternative
Hmm.
music. So yeah, and then I was windsurfing at the time. I had an older friend that I met through some other people, and he really got me into like Black Flag, and I really started going to like I went to like Amsterdam to see like Pennywise,
Oh, nice.
and then every summer in Holland there's like the Lowlands Festival. So Holland, half of Holland is like underneath the like the water level.
Yeah.
So the festival is in like the like the county that was built at the end. So that's literally all like under like sea level. Anyway,
Yeah.
they started like this. I was every year in August. I think I missed the first one, but the second one I went to, it was officially called like a camping flight to Lowlands Paradise, I believe is like the official name. We just called it Lowlands because that was obviously the easy one. So I remember going to the one. It's got to be like probably like August 1994. The Offspring, Rollins Band, Biohazard, I saw play there, and I had a friend that I met. I also got into skateboarding at that time, and I had one of my friends that's still one of my really good friends. Him and I went together, and we like camped outside, and then it's like a 3-day festival. And then so I just remember those highlights, right? Because there's a ton of bands like the Breeders played, and some of the stuff I really liked, and definitely them as well. But some of it is just like filler to me, and then there's obviously those highlights, like, and I think those three were definitely like the highlights with the Offspring. It definitely, it was like this time period too in like music where they just all like blew up, like that kind of music just became super popular,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. And then in February 1995, I saw the Beastie Boys play. They played at this huge venue like The Hague, and by this time I was like full on like skateboard kid, like baggy pants and the backpack, and I don't know.
Yeah.
That was like my whole thing, and a lot of my friends at the time I that I made through like skateboarding. Some of who I went to school with. I just remember walking in this gigantic hall, and I remember just like looking around, and all these kids like looked like me. And even though now when I say that sounds so almost like, yeah, I don't know, like weird. Like at the time I was like, oh my God, these are my people, like I remember like this is my gang, so I remember that very vividly. And then with the Beastie Boys, obviously too, they kind of opened up a little more like the hip hop side, but then there was Sabotage, was obviously huge at that time. And I just remember the people going nuts, people were just going crazy for that. So that was August 1990, no, February 1995. I went back to Lowlands in August 1995. Doggy Dog, Foo Fighters, Green Day, NRA, this like punk rock band out of Amsterdam. Like,
Hmm.
still a huge fan of that band. No Fun at All, No Effects, Sick of It All, Pennywise. And I definitely got really into Pennywise around that time too. I was a huge Pennywise fan, kind of still am, mainly like their older stuff because I haven't really kept up with the stuff now. But I remember they played in like, so they had like 3 tents and at like the Lowlands Festival, and they played in tent C or whatever, like the smaller one. And it was just like way too small, and like people getting on stage, and I thought the stage almost collapsed or was about to collapse. It was just like out of control. And I definitely remember then like thinking like, whoa, this punk rock thing went from small to huge in like a year and a half or something, and I'm part of the problem there almost, you know what I mean? It just was
Yeah.
like blowing up like crazy. Lagwagon, Millencolin was also huge, and they're obviously out of Sweden, so they played in Holland fairly often. Lagwagon and Pennywise and Good Riddance, they played in Holland often, so I got into it also because that was like they used to play like 30 minutes south. We just like take the train to this club was like next to like the train station, like even on like a weekday. Yeah, and so I saw them play a lot over the years in the
Yeah.
mid 90s.
I mean, that's really lucky too, because like growing up in St. Louis, I was always watching those tour dates, and like, 98 onwards was when I was kind of getting into music. And so I would look at No Use for a Name and Good Riddance and AFI's tour dates, and it would seem to like always be like Chicago, Detroit, and then it would be like Miss St. Louis, and I'd be like Denver, and I'd be like, oh, come on. Like it would always seem like the tour routings for a lot of those bands would just skip exactly where I was. So it's pretty cool. And like, man, that Unknown Road, About Time, Full Circle, Pennywise era was super important for me as well. Like that 3 record run were some of my most formative getting into punk rock albums for sure, is that record run.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. Like especially like I think I got About Time first when it kind of dropped, and then I bought Unknown Road. And by the time Full Circle came out, I was already kind of like passed on a little bit. But the About Time record, yeah, that one was like that just defined for me like the sound, I guess, that I was looking for. That really like clicked with me. The only other thing I think I kind of like didn't touch on, I was in like a cover band in like high school, and we played some like Green Day songs off Kerplunk. If I say it right, we played Bro Him
Nice.
from like Pennywise, and then we played one song from like NRA, which again is his band from Amsterdam, which is yeah, still a huge fan of that band. They came to the US a couple times, but they never got super big. But yeah,
Where does Propagandy enter your story and awareness?
yeah. So this is where I did some more of like my homework, and again, I kind of like enjoyed going down this like journey. So I'm pretty sure I missed the first Fat Rat comp. But I did own a couple of a copy of Survival of the Fattest, and I had to look it up, which came out in 1996, with the Nation State song obviously on there. So that's probably definitely that has to be the first time that I heard them. And then How to Clean Everything. I don't think I ever owned a copy, but I had a friend who literally lived like two blocks from me, and he skated a little bit, and he had a ton of music as well. And so we kind of like would like hang out at each other's houses on like weekends and just listen to records, you know. And then I definitely remember he had that one, and yeah, we listened to that one a ton. I still love that record to death. Like that, just like Anti Manifesto there too. Just like coming like out of the About Time, right, from like Pennywise. It kind of like is on that same line, and I'm probably like Chris or like the band would not like to hear that, but that to me it kind of like set me. It was like these stepping stones, right? And so, yeah, that
Yeah, I
record
mean,
is still one of my top records of all time.
people like you and me who are drawn to that sound, we needed a band like Propagandy to be within that sound, but also to elevate and challenge us with like another level of lyricism, another level of musician performance. So like, yes, that like it's totally, they were definitely within that sound for me. But for me, what was so important about them was that they were elevating just a slight bit into different directions that a lot of the other bands that I loved weren't taking me in. Does that make sense?
100%, yeah, 100%. And it definitely like poked me, right? Like sometimes like uncomfortable in a way. Like obviously being born and raised in like Holland, it's very open. We're like the first place in the world that allowed like gay marriage, and so it was pretty open. Like the town that I'm from is still referred to as like Cuba at like the Wall River, so it's very left leaning, very like anarchistic. Like squad houses are obviously a thing still like all over Holland, but it was definitely very left leaning where I came from. And even though it doesn't feel like that, like I was raised very like everybody's equal, and it wasn't even a thing that this, I don't know, like especially nowadays it's still an issue, which is so crazy. And again, the band touched upon these subjects, and the fact that it almost means more now, or it has more of like a meaning now than it did then, is crazy, right? Like how backwards can we go? You know, it's
I know.
sad, you know. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
just right. They were right then, and they're even more right now, which again just shows that where we're going is not forward, but it's backwards, you know.
Yeah, I was just assessing the views of the new Speaker of the House of Representatives for the
Oh
United
man,
States
yeah.
government, and I was just completely blown away. reading this person's being like, these are my views, and he was saying them very, very clearly, and I was like, well, this is really, really bleak. Where's the floor? Like, where's the bottom? It keeps happening over and over from generation to generation. Makes me frustrated, but also grateful that we get to have conversations like this where we have a place to actually say that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually, my wife told me about his wife's website because she's completely like conversion therapy, and she had a website and she like took it offline once people kind of like saw it in the last couple of days or weeks. There's his account online. I don't know the guy's full name, but the account on Instagram is called World Clown, and he buys up all these like websites that are almost close to like the representative's name or like rep so and so. Anyway, he bought her site up, and then so he took like screenshots of her old website, and he's basically putting the whole website back online. So he's like, no, this is who you are. Like, can't hide. You know, the internet doesn't hide. So
Yeah.
um,
Ugh. Well,
but
let's chat a little bit about some propaganda stuff. Have you ever seen them live before?
yes, I did too, and that's where all the digging. I actually looked
Tell
at
me
my
some
phone.
stories.
Let's see. So the first time I saw them live, there was this like skate park in Amsterdam, and it was in a squatted building, and it was an
Mm.
old like I didn't even know the exact English word, but it's like a fridge house is what we call it in like Dutch. So it's where they would like keep like fish or stuff on ice, like all that kind of stuff. So it was this super old building with like these super thick walls. I just remember going there and up the steps. And anyway, like the skate park was on like the third floor. So that's actually like the name of like the skate park. So it was called Skate Park Third Floor, and it's one of the first indoor parks in Holland. So
Oh,
we have a
cool.
lot of rain, and so I would take the train. As a student in Holland at the time, you get a free pass for the train and the bus. So as soon as I had that, when I was like, I believe you had to be 16, I would just travel. And like that's kind of when I started to skate as well. So I would just travel and go there a lot. And then one of the weekends, I'm pretty sure I planned it. Either I went with some friends, I don't recall exactly, or my folks dropped me off because my dad had an aunt that lived in that area. But that's when I first saw him. So they had this like punk skate festival going on. Um, yeah, basically just in like another room really close to like the skate park. And I just really remember that Chris said like, "Thank you for everybody that's like not smoking in here." So smoking got banned in Holland only like 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years ago, like definitely after I left. So at that time, I remember that too from like bands or like even from all the skaters. If you go to Germany or Holland, like people just smoke indoors, like like it was completely normal. And so I didn't smoke. I never have. I never will. And so for him to say that to me as like a 15, 16-year-old kid, like, thanks for not smoking. And I was like, yes, that's what my friends need to hear. So I definitely remember that from that show. I don't remember like the songs or like the playlist. I just remember that vividly. And again, as somebody that like didn't smoke, especially at that time when all your friends, when you have all these like all this peer pressure, it just like I don't know, that just really sticks with me.
Nice. Was that a John K. Sampson era show, or was it a Todd?
So no, I as far as I like looked it up, it was April 1996.
Oh, so that was John. That was
Yeah,
like
it had to
John's
be.
last. It was like one of John's last runs with the band because Todd's first shows were in December of '96.
Yeah, I don't know when Less Talk More Rock came out. It's probably after.
It was '96. I don't remember the exact day.
Okay. Okay,
But
so it's probably on that tour then.
yeah,
April
yeah,
1996. Yeah, that's what I found out. April 1996. So yeah, definitely super early. I'm definitely stoked on it because I heard some people on the show before and I was like, I saw them for the first time in 2000 something. And I was like, oh, like I know when I did, but I was definitely super early. And I mean, I was gonna go skate there a lot, right? Almost every weekend, but I definitely went there to see them, and see the bands. Again, I don't even know which other bands, but I definitely remember seeing them play there. And yeah.
amazing. Is that the
So
only time you've seen him?
no, I've seen them quite a bit. I actually went into my calendar the other day and look because I was going to put this in like my calendar, and then obviously Apple is pretty good with the calendar. So I saw them February 2014. at the Echoplex in LA with my buddy Ashton. So there's a big gap, right? So there's a huge gap. So I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen them in between. I think like 1996 to 2014, unless I saw them some other time in Holland. But I moved out to California in end of 1997. I moved out here. No, that's not true. I moved out here in 2007. Sorry, 2007, 16 years ago. So I don't think I've seen them in between. So I saw them in 2014 up in LA. Then I saw them in Orange County, which is also California, November 2017. I saw them on a Saturday, and then the next day they played in LA, and I went there to see them again at the Regent. So 2 days in a row. I remember like the Orange County show, especially. That's kind of like this pit. It's like it has these steps kind of in the floor, these like huge steps, right? Not like super small steps. But anyway, like the last step takes you into the pit, which is like lower than like the rest. So even if the place is filled, you can see the band from anywhere that you are. But I just remember standing just outside the pit, and because I just wanted to see them play and like scream along, and that's exactly why I just remember being like my voice being like completely gone the next day, because when I went to the show up in LA, I just watched like like my voice was completely gone. Then I saw them in 2018 in Amsterdam with three of my friends. I actually tried to help Chris get back into their YouTube channel, because at the time I was helping a bunch of bands and skateboard pros with like all the social media stuff. So I hit up Chris, and then I think on Twitter, and we talked, and I was like, I think I can get you back, because I had a friend that worked up at YouTube. So I was like, I can help you. Like, I usually charge for this, but it's all good. And then as I was looking at my flights back to Holland, and then I saw their dates, I'm like, Chris, is there any way you can get me some tickets? And he's like, yeah, cool, you're on the list +1. And then I had to hit him back like the day before. I'm like, any chance you can do +3? And he's like, no problem. And then I saw him after the show, and I just went up and I was like, hey, thanks for the tickets. And he's like, oh, cool, like, so good to meet you. And then till this day, I have not been able to get him back into like the YouTube, because my friend up at YouTube switched roles at the time, and he lost access to what was needed to kind of like look behind the curtain. And so, Chris, if you hear this, I'm really sorry, but thanks for the free tickets.
Oh my God. Did you get a chance to see them when they were doing their West Coast shows last year in 2022?
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say about the Amsterdam show. So this is like at the Milky Way out of Amsterdam, which also has like the first floor. And so
dude,
I was there the first.
I saw Mogwai there, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was in like the smaller room, I believe, of like the Milky Way, but it's still a really cool venue, and like, in like the first floor, and we're just standing all the way in the back because we just wanted to see, like down. And I remember just like a few songs in, I was like, I can't just stand here. Like, it's rad to be here with all my friends, but and I remember going into the pit, not like crazy into the pit, but kind of like close to it. And I saw like two of my friends that I used to skate with, like they were like, and obviously they didn't even know that I was in Holland, so that was kind of cool, because they're like, what, wait, like like so excited. So then I saw them. So I saw them October 2022 at the Music Box down in San Diego. Super weird venue, like almost one of the worst venues I've ever been to. Didn't like the venue at all, but I was a little bit under the weather and stuff that week, so I was planning to do all 3 shows. Actually, like, got tickets for all 3. And I remember DMing with Chris on Twitter for some stuff, and he's like, dude, I got you or something, or I think I was gonna get him some shoes. He's like, dude, if you ever need lists. I'm like, no, I already got tickets, all good. Like, I just want to support, it's like no problem. So I went there. I remember Steve Caballero was there, like the pro skateboarder who's also in this punk rock band called Urethane. If you haven't heard of them, check it out. They're actually pretty good.
And the Faction.
Yeah, OG from the Faction for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him there up front with the whole band, with like Urethane. He's like, oh, like our singer Tim, if I have his name correct, is a huge fan. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a huge fan too. He's like, have you seen him before? And he's like, no. And I was like, what? I'm like, you never seen Propaganda before? He's like, no, I didn't even know what they really sound like. So it was actually his first show seeing Propaganda, which I thought was pretty cool. And I had some other friends there. So they did San Diego, Pomona, LA. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I was just too sick. And I remember my friend who lives pretty close to me called me. He's like, I'm going to the show up in LA. Fuck it. I'm just driving right now. And I'm like, you want me to pick you up? And I'm like, man, I'm just so drained. I'm like, I can't. But I definitely had planned to go to all three. But yeah, I had to skip that one. So I only did one of them.
Isn't it super funny though? You've seen them a couple times in a row in the past, and I went to 3 shows in a row in Winnipeg. I did 3 shows at the May 2022 Southern Ontario dates, and I'm just like, how is this possible that I just don't get tired of it? Like I go to the shows like multiple nights in a row, multiple nights in the same week, and it's just with this particular band, I feel like I could see them 6 or 7 nights in a row, and I just like would be like at the end of like 6 or 7, I might be like, okay, I'm good now. But then, like before that, at the end of night 3 in Winnipeg and in Ontario, I was not tired of it yet. I was like, okay, amazing. But I could have done a night 4 easily.
Yeah, I remember going to the 2 shows in whatever I said, like 2018. No, what was that?
Yeah, I think it was 18.
2017. Anyway, I went to like the second show. Some of my friends like, really? Like you're going again? And I'm like, dude, like I don't know. You just see other stuff too, because you kind of already know like the song order, and I don't know. There's just I don't know. I actually really like it. I can highly recommend it, but I haven't done it with too many bands. I think I did it with Against Me once, who I also really like. But yeah, you just see other things like night two or
Well,
even three or
and what's so crazy is like whenever I go see them now, I just presume it's the last time I'll ever see them. Do you know what I mean? Like even if I have tickets 3 nights in a row, I presume nights 2 and 3 will get canceled for some reason. You know what I mean? I never take it for granted anymore. And if you look at what's going on now, it's November 2023. They haven't played a show since like October 2022. So we're already at 13 months now since they've last played a show. I mean, it's like that's a huge gap of time, you know?
yeah, obviously I have some. When I looked at like the times that I've seen them, there's definitely some big gaps, right? Like a couple years or like even more. So it's like I don't know. I guess I just hope that they come back. I think also like living down here now, like Southern California, I think you get a little bit more bands coming here because they always can like sell out shows. I think here, right? There's just more people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like an easier one to do. And I don't know. So hopefully they'll come back. But I definitely feel that too. Every time I'm like, well, they're coming back to California. They're coming back to California. I'm like, damn, if you live somewhere else. But I've thought about like if they're gonna do a show like and go play in Denver, like I'll fly out and go to the show. Like I definitely don't want to miss next time they do a tour or something.
I'm so lucky that I live so close to Toronto because I know that Chris being a huge Maple Leafs fan, they'll always play Toronto pretty much no matter what. So I'm like, yes, if there's going to be a tour, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to go.
Yeah.
Well, let's chat about some tunes. Whenever I got in touch with you, you picked 4 songs as your top 4, and they are I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist, Resisting Tyrannical Government, A Speculative Fiction, and Failed Imagineer. So I like the fact that you've gone throughout the eras of the band in your song selections. But let's start with the tunes from Let's Talk More Rock. We'll go into I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist first.
And I was a lucky just 8-year-old McCarthy, good stuff. 1979, I spent spring break on the flight line. On the base in the Carolinas, US version of my
Tell me a little bit about why you chose this song as one of your tops.
So when you asked me to do like 4 songs, I was on a drive to an event somewhere over the summer, and I just remember like playing it like on shuffle, like their whole catalog. And every time I had a song I liked, I would take a screenshot. And then when I came home a couple days later, I remember going through them and go like, okay, I just want to like mix it up a little bit and also like touch maybe on songs that weren't discussed yet. And again, this is like 5 months ago now, 4 months ago. So maybe obviously that has a little bit passed. But yeah, I wanted to definitely do a little bit different. At first I tried to do like one from every record, but then obviously there's more than 4, and then it's just hard to pick favorites. Like I said before we went live, like you in the podcast have like forced me to like pick a favorite album, pick a favorite song. But like a couple months ago, I was like, Greg, you can't do this to me. I can't pick favorites.
I have to. I had to make you pick, you know?
I know, and that's fine. Like I said, I definitely had a fun time going through it and like doing that. So I want to say I picked these songs as well go to the different records. But again, like these first two are obviously of like the same record. So
So let's start with I was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist. Why?
yes.
What is it about this song that made you pick it for your list?
So obviously this band has like, like the music is like super rad, but it's like the lyrics, right? I think that's when you really get into it. And again, like English is not my first language. It kind of has become that living in America for 16 years. But I was pretty big, like when I was in high school, like my favorite two classes were like geography and like history. And like obviously when it comes to history, at the time too, we, every year you have a couple subjects, and one of them for us was like US history. I remember that in my senior year of like high school. So that's definitely obviously what this is about, like Senator McCarthy and stuff, and I remember like being like interested in that just as as like a person in class in like high school. But then also when I was listening to these records, I was like, whoa, like they're talking about this, like I was just talking about this in class. Like I just thought it was like so cool that a band was just like talking about that, because again, I love like all the Pennywise and like Lagwagon, no effects are kind of more like, with all due respect, but like kind of like fart jokes, and like, and that's all fun and games too. But then I don't know, when it really comes down to it, like stuff that like makes you think obviously is, at least to me, like way more impactful, right, in every way. And I think so that really honed in on me at the time. Like it just, I just thought it was so cool that I was talking about this like dull stuff in school, and then here's this band that I really like, and they're talking about this stuff. And so
Yeah, and like to me, what that does is you get a lesson in school, and everybody can picture sitting in a classroom with one of their teachers in the past, right? And you're getting information, you're paying attention here, you're not paying attention there. You got some notes here, some taking a test there, and some of the information sticks, right? But it's when you get reinforced through secondary forms of analysis, like in a song or in a documentary or something like that. That's kind of when it really is like, oh, other people have learned about this too, and here are their thoughts and opinions on it. So a song on top of something that you've just learned about in school is like this secondary level of analysis that reinforces what happened in the classroom, and then actually makes the information stick in the brain in a way that a lecture about something else that your teacher was talking about would never do. Does that make sense?
yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess I can like give the band that as well, where it's like it made me pay attention even more to like history. Right? I definitely know that because maybe as my 16-year-old like skateboard mind wasn't into history at all, but I definitely was into history, and that's probably partly because of this as well. I definitely see that link there. So
I love it. Do you have any like favorite lyrics in the song, or any like life lessons or stories that kind of jump out at you because of Pre-Teen McCarthyist?
yeah, so obviously too, what I like when people like describe the band, or when I have to like describe the music, like especially now, like I definitely want to call it like trash punk or trash metal even, right? But what I always liked, and I think that's also what I like about punk rock, like in general, is that you can often just hear what they're saying, right? It's not like screaming and you cannot make out of it. So with this song too, it's kind of sounds fairly basic, like especially the intro, and like you just hear every word that they're, like it doesn't go super fast either. But the one line that I really that are, there's a few lines, but like the first line that I have is like, separated flesh from bones and honed its skills on lesser humans. Like I almost have to sing it. I can almost not read it. But like the lesser humans is obviously too, I remember this also from like history class with like all the Nazis, and when they talked about the Jews, right? It was always like lesser humans. And again, like coming from a family or like a country or a place where I was raised at, where like everybody's equal, like that definitely stuck with me. And obviously too, like, reading about like the World War, and, which happened pretty heavily in like my hometown as well, in like Holland. Have you ever seen the movie A Bridge Too Far? That's actually the bridge in my hometown. So there's a ton of stuff from like the World War II around us. So the World War II stuff always made a huge impact on me, also because my grandpa would often talk about it and how we had to eat like basics, and I don't know, I just remember that stuff. So that lesser human part just hits home in like a lot of aspects. And again, even now, as sad as it is, it's like, when it's like Israel, or even obviously in like the
Dude,
US, or
I was just thinking about that because yesterday obviously was the huge ground invasion into the Gaza Strip, where the Jabalia refugee camp was essentially bombed into a hole in the ground. And I was on social media yesterday watching people in Jabalia pulling lifeless teenage and preteen bodies out of rubble. And everything, like from cats were being pulled out, like cat bodies were being pulled out. I mean, it was crazy the amount of things that I subjected my brain to yesterday, but it's exactly what I was thinking about, how this honed its skills on lesser humans line was visible yesterday, Halloween 2023 in the Gaza Strip, and it was all over the internet, and you can see it for yourself if you choose to do so. But that line does not become less relevant,
no, it's crazy. Like obviously like that whole thing with Israel, and like I've turned off a little bit of it, because again, it's like so gnarly what you're getting into, and it's like no one's right and everybody's right and everybody's wrong and no one's wrong, you know what I mean? It's like, but I feel like too, like I've been really like trying to understand like why the US has such a tie with like Israel, right? And obviously been watching some stuff online, and there's a religious connection, and but I feel like too, when it really comes down to it, I think like the US also treats the world as like, they approach the world as like a bully, and like Israel does the same. And then now obviously like Hamas in no way is the answer, right? And it's in no way it's right at all, like, because that's what people try to see, like, well, if you're anti-Israel, you're pro-Hamas. It's obviously way more complicated than that and has all these layers in it. But it's like Israel has been a bully, still is a bully, like insanely a bully at the moment again, right? And then people like fought back, and then now they got punished for fighting back, and it's like, I don't know, I rather speak up against the bully, and I think we all should, you know what I mean? And it's like so people are so one-sided. I mean, as the whole world is, right, the last too many years. But
and for the US, I mean, it's totally just about sphere of influence and presence within a region of the world where its influence is not great, right? If you think about all of the neighbors around it, you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have Lebanon, you have Syria, all regions of the world where the United States' influence is very low. So to have this one little area where there is an economic and military